And good, happy 4th of July morning, everybody. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of amazing food safety, food quality, great products that we're all going to barbecue and eat today. And food safety is something that is just expected, but we know here that that's not true. So on this 4th of July, Elena and I want to thank you for all that you do and for checking in here on the 4th of July as well. So if you're new, welcome. Pull up a chair. This is the Food Safety Chat Live. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group. And every week at this time on Fridays at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern on LinkedIn and YouTube, we do a live stream. And I get to bring an expert on and we have a chat with you about all things food safety. And I'm really excited this week to have Elena on. So Elena Montoya with 5280 Food Safety. How are you doing today, Elena?
I'm doing well, Brian. Good morning to all of our food safety heroes and friends, and happy 4th of July, everyone.
Yeah, and the dedication, right? So as we were saying for the promo here for the event, uh, freedom and food safety, right? You have to guard those things all the time. They never take a break. So the pros, they're here today with us, joining us for the chat. That's for sure. So one of the things that we love to do here on the chat, right, is where are you at in the world? I am in Loveland, Colorado, and oops, I'm in Loveland, Colorado this week, not Colorado. Oops. But where are you at, Elena?
I'm in Aurora, Colorado. We're practically neighbors, Brian.
Yeah, it's probably what, an hour or so away from each other.
Yeah. Good
Not
morning,
too bad.
Jill and Michelle.
Good morning, morning. Oh, so good that Jill is here. Yeah, she was saying that she's at a remote location, so somewhere that she normally isn't. So good to see Jill. And have you been outside this morning? It's muggy. It's very atypical for Colorado, isn't it?
It's a little hot and humid today. I even had my air conditioning on this morning.
Oh, yeah, it's like, what is it? It's saying 69 degrees already, and yeah, you can definitely, yeah, it's Colorado. We don't get humidity here, and when you do, and it's nothing like I'm sure people back east have, but you can definitely feel it. Bonna's up en route from Seattle back to Twin Falls. I love Twin Falls. Beautiful, beautiful city. Sarah's here.
Good
Look at all these
morning,
dedicated
Vana.
pros checking in here. And that's one of the things too, working in the food industry, it's 24/7, right? People have to eat, and somebody had to make all those brats and burgers and buns and all that stuff that we're enjoying today. So that's always good that they do that. So with that, everybody, if you'll please join Elena and I for a drink of your favorite July 4th beverage. Cheers.
Cheers.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I was telling Elena here before we got on. My dog decided he wanted to start the day early today, so this is about my third cup of coffee. So if I'm like this, you know why. Hey Tim, good to see Tim.
Good
I
morning,
love
Tim.
Tim. I love what Tim does on LinkedIn. I'll embarrass Tim here a little bit. He really kind of pulls back the curtain on his life, and we get to see his family and his daughter playing basketball. You know, ripping away the rebound from the other girls, and then the ref blows a whistle, and everybody just kind of standing there like, "What?" Just super cool. What he got his roof redone on his house
I
recently,
was going
so
to say, I tune in just for the home improvement projects and pro tips.
oh, yeah, yeah, Tim's much handier than I am. My sister's ex-husband is super handy. You know, he like built additions on his house and stuff like that. And I was helping him one time, and he had me cut some 2x4s down to length for something he was doing, and I cut him wrong. And so then I was reassigned to other duties after that.
Trash
So
pickup.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, anything where I couldn't possibly. I think that was kind of the main thing. So with that, everybody, we are now going to do, oh, here it comes. It's got to be done. Got to be done. The dad joke. Elena, are you ready for the
I'm
dad
ready,
joke?
Brian.
And as we talked about, my lawyers require that I put a disclaimer up here. So here's the disclaimer. All right. Disclaimer's out of the way. All right. Dad joke. Elena, what did the colonists wear to the Boston Tea Party?
I have
Well, of
no
course,
idea.
they wore their T-shirts.
Oh, I still think your second book should be a book of dad jokes.
Dad jokes, definitely. I think so too. Um, so with that, I mean, it's with our topic here today. Um, I think it's really important, right? 'Cause this is on my profile picture, and really this is for consulting and everything else. But we see, it seems like, Elena, more and more profiles on LinkedIn with that little thing around there, right? Open to work. And people are, jumping into new opportunities. There's lots of change going on right now, isn't there?
Industry is inundated with change on a daily basis, but I think the open to work one has been one that has affected so many within our industry. And I think it really all started with Doge, Brian, Department of
Mhm.
Government Efficiency, that impacted several key departments within the food safety industry. Also, I see that a lot of companies these days are restructuring to a leaner business model to remain profitable.
Yeah. Definitely. And building out that skill set of what you need to be successful in your roles is really, really important. So actually we have two videos here today. So for the second one, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit here, Elena. But building out those skills is very important, is being able to build the communication skills. So congratulations on your award. So Toastmaster of the Year, Super Communicators. Congratulations for that.
Thank you so much, Brian. Again, it's an honor to be here today. Toastmasters International is an organization that focuses on leadership development through public speaking. As a matter of fact, our Super Communicators Club will be hosting a speechcraft. This is a great way to try out the organization. It's a 6-week process where you get to work on your speeches and presentation skills. If you'd like more additional information on that, or if you'd like to attend as a guest, please send me a message on LinkedIn. I would love to extend an invitation.
And I think you're a living, breathing model of how that works because your communication skills, top notch.
Thank you.
So being able to build those skills is really important. And with that open to work piece of it, having those connections and doing that is really important. And part of what I always emphasize, and this kind of gets into the first point that we wanted to talk about here, is it's a fit, right? So part of this, and really when you're looking for a role, and so part of this is kind of giving some tips and tricks around here today of things we've learned from both sides, right? As somebody, I've hired a lot of people in my career, and a lot, I've been on the other side too, where I'm looking for new roles. Is the important thing to remember here is, and this is a good tip from negotiation for people to remember, is you always think that you're in the weaker position. And that's not true.
Mhm.
Well, what do I mean by that? A good example of this, Elena, is if you're, let's say, for example, if you're looking to buy a car and you find the car that you love and you're thinking, oh gosh, it's so expensive. And I don't know if I can afford this. And I hope the dealership will work with me. And I hope nobody else comes and buys it before you're right. All these things go through your mind. You think you're in a really bad position to buy this car. Well, guess what? That car dealer on the other side of the table is thinking the same stuff. He's going, "Oh, geez, it's almost the end of the month and I haven't hit my quota yet, and I really need to sell this car. My boss is all over me. I hope that they don't go too low on the price. I hope I can make this deal happen." You always think that you're in the weaker position. And that applies for when you're looking for a new role as well. You think that you have to have this role, the company thinks that they need to fill it immediately and all these things. And you have to always remember that. And it's a two-way street. Both sides are looking for things like this. And you have to always approach it from that standpoint of, is this the right fit? And that applies for both sides of the equation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think finding or choosing your next company and leadership team is one of the most important things that you can do to create work-life balance and to grow your career. And it has to be that right fit. You have to feel inspired, valued, and have a connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And realizing too, and you need to take these things into consideration, that if you're starting a new role, that balance is probably going to be out of whack for a while, right? Because you're going to have to get up to speed. There's going to be that giant learning curve. You have to understand the processes, the culture, who you're working with. They're bringing you in for a reason, right? There's probably some giant fire that's burning. and they want you to come in and help fix it, right? So you're going to be jumping into things right away, and you have to be mentally prepared for that. And you have to understand exactly. And a lot of times, it's human nature. If I'm hiring you for a role and I have this giant problem that I need to fix, let's say that, for example, FDA came into one of my plants and I got a 43 and I'm really worried that I'm going to have a recall. I'm not going to come out and say that necessarily. I'm going to say things like, there's lots of challenges that are in this company that you need to address. You need to ask follow-up questions and say, tell me a little bit more about these challenges that you're going through, right? That's your responsibility as somebody who's being interviewed as well, isn't it?
I think it's really important during that interview process to ask questions. Not only are you being interviewed, you should be interviewing the company that you are considering taking role in. So,
Mhm.
for instance, asking them, why is this role currently available? An
Mhm.
answer I always like to hear is the previous individual was promoted.
Yeah.
This demonstrates growth opportunity within the company. That's a key component for a company I want to work for. I also look for companies that prioritize and support continuous improvement. For me, that's a sign of a stronger food safety culture and something that is really key to my growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sharon says it well here. Is you're looking for that cultural fit. It's again, it's a marriage. You're looking for that right match, and you're trying to figure out. And we all, that's kind of the buzzwords that are going on right now. And what we do is food safety culture. That's a subcomponent of company culture. How does that company operate? How big are they? How do the different divisions function? Fortunately, now with the internet, we can do a lot of research and we can figure out a lot of stuff in advance. And you can go to websites and look at information, and you can go to message boards and you can go to sites like Glassdoor and start to get more of a feel of what this company actually is and what it is that you're getting into. And that, yeah, why is it open? Well, why are you guys looking to fill this role? That's very, very important. And to your point, promotions, super, right? Great. Yeah, the person who is in this role, we've been grooming for the next level. They're moving on to this next challenge, and you're going to be backfilling behind them. And guess what? They're going to be available to help mentor you and help you succeed in that role. Yes.
Love
Versus,
that.
yeah, this role is open, and we found out that we got a big problem, and we need somebody to come in here and figure it out. Right? Okay, well, in that situation, I'm on my own. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
I need to understand that, and what does that mean, and what does winning look like in those type of scenarios? And we'll talk more about that piece of it later. Um, Another indicator of how desperate they may be for you is how quickly do they want this filled? It's like, okay, well, we're looking to have this role filled here in the next, 6 to 8 weeks or perhaps longer. We want to make sure that it's the right person. That's why we're talking to a lot of different people. Versus, we need somebody now.
Mhm.
Can you be here tomorrow? FDA is coming in. And that's, yeah, you need to understand that side as well too. What's their urgency?
Well, even oftentimes, especially when you're talking about leadership roles, I find that the interview process can often be a 4 to 6 week process because oftentimes you're going to have multiple rounds of interviews, including an on site. You're going to interview with all of the leadership team from that facility. And that's a great opportunity, again, to dive deep, ask the pressing questions, have a gauge and a fit for the culture, the leadership team who you're reporting into, and to see if that's the right fit for you.
Yeah. Another good indicator that I would look like at somebody who's going into interview for a potential role is, who do they have me talking to? Is it just the food safety quality assurance team? If so, that's not good. I should be
Mhm.
talking to, and of course, this is also dependent upon the role. But if I'm looking at a leadership position in food safety or quality assurance within a company, I want to be talking to operations, procurement, legal, communications, R&D. I
Maintenance.
want to talk with everybody that I'm going to be interacting with.
Mhm. Absolutely. I also think that it's really important while you're in the hunt for your next current role is that you're outlining your career growth goals. This
Mhm.
can be really essential in building a successful career. It can help you choose the right mentor, identify areas for improvement or areas where you may lack experience. And it can also provide you a roadmap to success.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of this is as you gain experience, one of the things that you're going to learn is when you're in college, university, and then you think you've got everything mapped out in your life. Guess what? Doesn't go that way. It never goes that way. You need to understand the general direction that you want to go, but you have to be able to pivot and adjust along the way. And one of the questions I would often ask very early, this would be even during the screening process, is are you willing to relocate? And for a lot of people now, the answer is no. And in the food
Mhm.
industry, that's a big problem, isn't it?
It sure is. Being willing to and open to relocation can really change the trajectory of your career.
Yeah.
For myself, being single and not having children or a husband and my little turtles, that makes that an easy yes for me. Whereas,
Mhm.
understandably, some people with families, maybe your kids are in a particular school system, or your husband also has a very successful career, that can often be very difficult. But for true growth opportunity, I think it is beneficial to be open to relocating.
Yeah. And sometimes there are roles where you can do it remotely. And with COVID and everything else, that kind of changed the dynamics in those areas and managers became a little more flexible. But the reality of working in food safety and quality assurance is it's boots on the ground. You have to go to the
Yes.
plants. You have to see what's going on. You have to visit the co-packers. And if you're like, no, I can't travel and I can't relocate, you're probably going to cut yourself off from the vast majority of potential growth in your career that you're going to be offered.
Yeah, I always used to say when I was in sanitation, I'm like, sanitation isn't one of those jobs you can do from home from afar. You need to be there to be with your teams, do those inspections, and make sure that alliance with compliance and regulations is being adhered to.
Yeah, and it's one of the things in the food industry, you have to love it. I love visiting plants. You learn so much, and you just get in these modes, right? When I visit a plant, I'm doing this all the time. Just, "What's that? What's
Hmm.
that?" Just looking around, just trying to figure stuff out. And once you get that mental map, so I visited a co-manufacturer for a client of mine here a couple weeks ago. And now that I've seen the plant, now that I've talked to the people, I can talk intelligently to them when they ask questions or I want to learn more. It's like, "Oh yeah, in that receiving room that you have in the back by your cream tanks, you had a valve cluster back there. I wanted to know a little bit more about how that works. Who do I talk to?" Oh, right? They know that you understand their plant now. And for operations in production facilities, that's their world, right? If you work in management in a production facility, that's your life. You're there 60, 70, 80 hours a week or more if you're the plant manager. That's your world. And they're very proud of that. And if you want to be part of that, you have to live in their world.
Absolutely. I've even suggested to some of my mentees in the past, if you're going to visit a new facility and you're not familiar with their process, watch some how it's made videos just for general
Oh,
information.
yeah. I love those videos. They're so cool.
Those are so
Um,
fascinating.
Yeah, it's just like you learn and you see a lot of the same equipment doing different things. It's
Hmm.
always super cool. So we also have the advantage, as we referenced earlier, sites like Glassdoor. Be careful with Glassdoor, though. A little caveat on that. People who rate companies tend to be people who are disgruntled, right? So it was
True.
an employee. It's like complaints, right? It's only the people who are upset do these things. So be careful with that. Another good resource, of course, then is LinkedIn and your connections on LinkedIn. Odds are, from one or two connections within LinkedIn, somebody who works at that company you're connected to or used to work at that company, even better. Right? Reach out to them, say, "Hey, I'm interested in this company. What can you tell me? How did you like working there?" Asking these questions and getting that non-biased opinion and doing that detective work. The more that you do up front, that comes through. That comes through in the interview. And that tells the people that you're talking with that you're taking this seriously and that you care.
Yes, I think networking can be an underutilized tool, especially when it comes to finding open positions or just being able to build a network of food safety or subject matter experts. These
Yeah.
experts can often be the foundation of your phone a friend when you're facing challenges in that particular role.
Yep. Yeah, Evan. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of the show. Evan got it here for me. How It's Made. Yes, I love that show. I love How It's Made.
It's
Um,
such a great show.
Yeah. And so there's an important thing, and I want everybody to kind of underline this as we're going through our talk here today, is there's a rule in place that I've always followed, and it's really, really important, is you work for a boss, not a company. Like, what? Right? That kind of, no. That person that you're working for, and you'd reference this as well, Elena, who's mentoring you, who's helping you grow. That person that you report into is incredibly important, incredibly important. You need to make darn sure that that person that you're going to be reporting to is someone who's going to help you grow and develop and further your career. And these questions that we're talking about here today are designed to help figure that out. If you have a great boss, you can be in a mediocre company and still succeed and do well
Mhm.
and grow and learn. That boss is protecting you. They are helping you. And there's things that they do that you'll never see. And the converse of that is you can have a fantastic boss who works in a company, to your point earlier, Elena, with a bad culture or it's just not a good company. There's only so much they can do. There's only so many battles they can fight, and you're going to suffer because of it. You need to figure that out. And that should be one of the main priorities within your interviewing process.
I think it's so important choosing a leadership team that is supportive, that is collaborative, that inspires you and supports your growth. That can mean a huge difference in your ability to grow. I, in the past, have left companies with poor leadership or just not the opportunity for advancement or growth within the company, as that's really important for me as I continue to evolve in my career path.
Yeah, and it's kind of a yin yang, good bad type thing. So it used to be, as an old coot like I am, the rule when I was starting in my career is even if you make a bad decision, you stay at that company for at least 5 years because if you don't, you become labeled a job hopper, and oh, that's super super bad. You're not going to stay here very long. I don't want to hire you. That's changed, I think.
That's definitely not the norm anymore, Brian. I think our industry and many industries alike are seeing more of a two-year turnover where people are staying in role. And I think that's more acceptable these days as opportunity for growth and advancement continues to change in the market.
Yep. And this is also a golden rule here as well too, is have your answer ready for when they ask you, well, why did you leave your last role?
Mhm.
Never badmouth your old company. Never badmouth anyone. That comes back to bite you more times than you even want to contemplate. That's really, really bad practice and it's unprofessional.
Well, it's also an indication of your character and how you're
Yeah.
going to address issues within the company while you're in role.
Yep. Absolutely. So that's a red flag for me if I'm hiring, because if you're bad mouthing the previous company, that means you're probably going to be bad mouthing me at some point in the future.
Agreed.
So I kind of wanted to jump in here and give a little bit of perspective from someone who hires a lot of people. If you know me from the chat here, right? I've been in senior leadership positions in food companies for a long time. I've hired a lot of people. Fortunately, I've only had to fire a few. Right? If it comes to that point, they know that they're not a right fit for that role, and it's my job to help them move on to something else. Right? It's nothing personal. It's just it was a bad fit. And you want to avoid that because that's just burned resources and nobody likes that. But what I would do then when I would hire is number one, first of all, I always wanted to promote if I could. And that's another sign of a good manager is you have a good succession plan in place. If you have a manager that's fearful that says, I can't train you everything that I know because then you'll just take my job, that's bad. Right? You
Mhm.
want people to take your role. So that's the only way that you can advance, right? If I want to become a senior vice president, the only way to do that is to train the vice president who's going to take that role. And I want that, right? Because I want to be able to develop and nurture them and have this continue what I've developed. I don't want somebody coming in there and blow up everything that I've done over the past 5 years. I want someone to continue that legacy of what I have built. So that succession planning piece of it is really, really important. It's a good thing for you to ask about during the interview as well. Is how does succession planning work in your companies? Guess what? In most companies, it's seat of your pants. And most people don't understand this. And so I'll make sure to emphasize this as well. HR does not work for you. HR works for the company. HR is there to protect the company. You are there to develop and promote your career. And people get that mixed up all the time. Never forget that rule. Um, I would use trusted recruiters. If I didn't have anybody internally that I wanted to promote at that point in time and I had an open role, There's a handful of recruiters that I still use to this day. And if people contact me on LinkedIn, I will refer them to those recruiters that I trust. And there's no relationship there. I don't get it. I just do that because I want the best people to find the best roles. And those connected recruiters in those industries are really important. And within those, you have specialties. So there's recruiters who specialize in dairy and produce and things like this. You need to understand who those recruiters are and then work with them. They are going to pay dividends. And that works on both sides of that equation. Recruiters are extremely valuable in helping figure out the employees, right? We see this on LinkedIn. There'll be a position posted and you'll go to look at it and it'll say over 100 people have applied for this role. Right? There's people out there just hitting apply. And, they're just trying to, oh my God, please, I need a job, right? And they'll probably be doing that again in 6 months again too. As part of the system now that we have to live with is it's a screening mechanism in place. And a lot of that is AI, a lot of that is keyword search, and HR is doing a lot of that work. And so you may get sorted out when you don't deserve it. So that's where those connections and understanding who the people are and having that relationship comes in very handy because they can put in a good word for you.
Absolutely. I often find too, it can be very helpful sending a direct message notifying either the recruiter or the hiring manager that you've applied, expressing interest and asking when you can set up an interview. Taking and initiating that first step shows them that you're a better fit for that role.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, Jill said, yeah, if bad mouthing, yeah, it's mindset. Absolutely. And
Absolutely, Jill.
Cortland's a CEO, and I'm sure he's hired a few people in his day as well too. People bouncing at the same role at different companies is a red flag. It means you're not growing. Yeah, excellent point, Cortland. So it's a funnel, right? The best way to think of this process is it's a funnel, right? You're narrowing it down. I don't have time to talk to 50 people. So I'm going to narrow it down. I'm going to talk to the top candidates. And if I narrow it down to 5 candidates or so, it's probably high, but we'll stick with 5. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going through the resume. If there's one thing I hate on resumes at leadership roles, right? So I would talk and I would hire people generally at the director and higher level. If your resume is simply a recitation of the job description, that's a bad sign, right? I already know what you do. I want to know what you did with that. It's like, I was responsible for developing the systems and managing customer complaints. Wow, super. Okay. And I was able to reduce complaints from 5 per million to 2.8 per million by doing this, and this. Yes. Tell me more about that. That's what I want to know. That's what I want to hear. And I want to see that on the resume. Your resume is the introduction. That's all it is. It opens the door. That's all it does. If you've opened that door up and I want to speak with you, the next thing I'm going to do is a phone interview. And I'm going to schedule that interview for an hour. I would always schedule those for an hour, Elena. And if I found that after a half hour, I was bored and I was looking around and I was trying to think of other stuff to talk about because you were giving bad answers that were yes or no answers, I would say, well, tell me something about this. And they would give me a short little curt answer. Okay. Right. And after a half hour, I was bored. Bad sign. If the hour flies by and I look at the clock and I'm like, oh crap, we're almost out of time. Good sign. Good sign. And I would always leave 10 minutes, and we'll talk a little bit more about this too, is I would always leave 10 minutes at the end of the interview to flip the script. And I would say it like this. I would say, well, Elaine, this has been a fantastic conversation today. I've really enjoyed talking with you. I've been spending a lot of time grilling you. It's your turn to grill me. What would you like to know about me, the company, our objectives? I will be straight up honest with you because I want you coming in here eyes wide open. What can I tell you? And then I would just leave the floor to you. If that person had no questions, bad sign.
That's a bad sign.
Means they didn't do their work, didn't do their homework. Nothing is perfect. You got to have questions. You must have questions.
Bryan, to touch back on the point of having examples of programs or projects that you've implemented for efficiency or cost savings, I also bring to interviews my interview binder.
Holy moly.
When I started this, it was 1.5 inches. It has grown. This is 5 years of examples of my work. So job aids, trainings, programs, validations, anything that I've done to show efficiency or cost savings, and I can flip and show them exact examples. And that can be really beneficial in furthering that discussion and getting that second interview.
Absolutely. And that's telling me right off the bat, without even looking at anything in that folder, this is an organized person and
Mhm.
methodical. If I'm looking
Yeah,
at a systems role, I'm saying, Elena is going to be, all right, this is somebody who understands how processes work and can show evidence. I like that. Right. So I'm going to ask you more questions on that side. Um, Here's an interesting thing that I think more and more people realize is that it used to be that degrees would open doors. And so what I found is not really the case anymore. It doesn't, the perception of prestige from a degree, even from a, like a fancy reputation school, doesn't really mean a whole lot anymore, does it?
no, it doesn't. I think passion can play a very important part in the hiring process, especially if you lack a certain level of skill or experience. I find that having a willingness to learn and demonstrating a commitment to continuous improvement, along with a great attitude, can get you far in any industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Another technique that I was just thinking of that people might want to consider is it. So part of this is, as we talked about, Elena, this is a two-way street, right? And you're looking at a new role, and you're out there searching, and you're looking for different companies, and you have your criteria list of things, just like you're shopping for a car. And you've targeted particular companies that you may want to work for, and you may not have contacts within that company. Consider doing an informational interview. People love to talk about what they do. And you can contact people and say, "Hey, listen, hi, my name's Brian, and I'm doing some research into this field, and I would like to interview you about what you do." Now, you don't want to be sneaky about this, and you don't want to be setting this up for a job that you're already targeting, right? That's a little, right, because that's going to come up later because you're probably going to be talking with that person again. They'll be like, "Hi," right? That's awkward. Um, so you want to do that in a way and looking at a company that you're thinking about. This is a really good way to gather information, and nobody really does that. It's scary in some ways, isn't it?
Absolutely. For any of you that are, additionally, I'd like to mention for any of you that are new to the hiring process, Brian has some great resources in his book, New Manager Mindset, including informational interviews, interview guide, evaluation form, and additionally a annual development plan. So those are some great resources for some individuals that are new to hiring.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for that. And something else that you need to understand too is the more important the role is, the longer the process is going to take. Right. So if you're interviewing for a director, VP type position, it's going to take a while because there's going to be a lot of input, and you want to see that. If they're hiring really really quickly, like we referenced before earlier, um, they got a problem and they just see you as somebody who's being brought in really quick to fix that problem. That tells you a lot about the company, right? They're very reactionary. They're not very organized. They're firefighters. Do you want to be in that type of environment? That's a clue right there.
Absolutely. I'd just like to touch on some of the comments. When I was mentioning validation, the validation I was mentioning was for new equipment validation when the company was expanding. So no trade secrets were shared.
Good old Cortland. Yeah. So Duncan had said here that he did something similar to you. So he had a folder like that when he would ask for a pay raise. Absolutely, right.
I love
And
that.
that's always something that's very important to remember as you're looking at this process is pay is a reflection of value. What do you bring to the table? And your goal is to demonstrate value. So anytime you have a role, it doesn't matter if $50,000 a year, whatever you're making, you have to make more than that to justify your position. And it has to be a lot more than that because you have to pay the taxes and the salary and the insurance and everything else. So if you have a $50,000 a year job, it's costing the company another 50% on top of that just to have you there. So it's already $75,000 a year that they're in the hole just having you sitting there. So what are you bringing that's going to bring that company 100,000, 150,000, $200,000 a year in revenue and protection and all of these type of things. Think about those. How do you demonstrate that? How do you show that to that company? How do you manage worth? And it's an abstract concept sometimes, I think, in quality that we don't quite understand, because again, we're technical people and we think that just pointing to something and saying, well, that's my resume, that shows that I can do this. I've got all these certifications, so you should hire me. Why?
You know, my sister had given me a really great tip when I started my career in the corporate world. And she told me to keep a list of all of my contributions and achievements. So if I made a suggestion to implement or improve something, or I had gone above and beyond, I would just keep a running little list. And it was just a note section in my phone, but it really helped during those discussions when I was advocating for myself for a raise or a promotion.
Mhm. Yep. Another good question. This goes back to the other book review, and I got this guy back here. This is a really good book, and I've referenced this before. The First 90 Days by Michael D. Watkins. You can get this off Amazon, and that's a good question to be asking as you're interviewing. Is, if I'm accepted into this role and this is a good fit, right? That's important wording here too. Listen to what I'm saying. If this is the right fit for me and you're
Mhm.
looking at me for this role, how do you envision, and this is the question you need to ask for your potential boss, what do you envision my first 90 days to look like? What you're asking is, what does success look like? Because at the end of that first
Mhm.
90 days, that boss is going to be sitting back and going, how's Elena doing? Did she do what I asked her to do? Did she improve things? Or is she flailing around, just kind of getting caught up in all kinds of weird stuff? Focus, right? What is the focus of what you want me to look at? And that's just not going out and executing, right? Because that's a problem too that people get caught up with, right? Bull in China shop. They go in there and they start saying, well, this is how I used to do things at my old company. Who cares? Who
Yes.
cares? You need to go in there and understand. And part of that first 30 days, and in the book, they go over this really, really well, is establishing what success looks like. Who should I be speaking with? Who do I need to understand? How do I integrate in? What do my objectives look like? What do I want to be doing? And constantly touching base back with your boss to say, okay, here's what I'm doing. Does this make sense? Should I be course correcting? And getting that understanding. Building that relationship with your team and your boss during that first 90 days is 90% of your success in that role.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the key questions I ask during every interview is what area do you or areas do you feel would benefit from improvement and what is your timeline? This
Yeah.
helps me build a roadmap for success and make sure that I'm aligned with their perspective and trajectory for that department and that role. And then it allows me to share experience related to the topic and can really be so beneficial. Another thing as a leader, I always like to let them know that in the first 30 days, I'm not making any changes. This
Mm.
is an observation period. I need to build relationships. I need to work out on the floor with my team and with the other department leaders, as well as I need to learn the process and observe the process to see what works and where opportunity lies. Getting feedback from those people out on the floor that those changes are going to affect is one of the most valuable and important things that I can do as a leader.
Yep. And that's a great segue. And there's amazing comments in here, guys. Keep them coming. Um, and really what I'm looking for here is, do you have the ability to think in terms of systems? Scott Adams talks about this a lot. There's a distinction between goals and systems. And probably the best example of this is, let's say, and most people do this. You set a goal that says, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. That's my goal. I'm going to lose 20 pounds in 3 months. And I'm going to set this up as a SMART goal. I'm going to measure it and all these type of things. Okay, that's great. And you may succeed at doing that. And then you gain it all right back. Why? It's because you didn't have a system in place. Yeah, you can achieve that
Yes.
goal in the short term, but the system is what keeps the weight off. What you should have is a system that says, I am going to create a system that allows me to exercise on a regular basis, allows me to have a good nutritional food that I'm going to I'm going to figure all these things out. And then guess what? The weight loss follows the system and it happens as part of your lifestyle. And then you modify and your system becomes what you do. It's not the goal. I'm always looking for the system side of things.
Absolutely.
And this ties into, and this is something you wanted me to bring up here in the chat today, and this is something I over in the book. And so for me, this was one of the big aha moments from my career. And I was in a role where this was my first leadership position within quality. I was running quality for a company. I was in my early 30s. I had no idea what I was doing. They had major issues with their quality systems, and I wasn't quite sure why. And I was trying to figure this out. And I was reading an article. I still have the article in QA magazine, and it was called "The Bus Driver." And I'm like, So I started reading this. And I was just like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. And this set everything on course for me from that point forward. So what is this? So the bus driver principle is this. So Elena, you own a bus company, and I'm your HR manager, and you come to me and you say, Bryan, I need to hire a new bus driver. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, tell me about that. Well, we need a bus driver for this route. Bill quit. We need to replace him. Okay. Well, should we use our standard resume? Yes, that's fine. What are the hours of operation? So as the head of HR, I'm going to get criteria from you or what you're looking for in that role. Same thing that a good recruiter does. Then I'm going to start going out in the marketplace and finding candidates to fill that bus driver role. Then I screen people, I get rid of the people who don't fit, and then I bring candidates to you. And your role then is to interview those candidates and say, okay, is this the person I want to hire or not? So in that scenario, let's say that I'm the person interviewing, you would start asking me questions and say, okay, Bryan, well, welcome to our company. We're glad that you're here. We have an opening for a bus driver. Yes. Are you familiar, Bryan, with the Model 17 yellow bus? Yes, absolutely. I've driven that bus for 20 years. Well, why are you looking for a new job? Well, the company I was with had a big layoff, and I got caught up in that, and so I'm looking for a new role. Do you have any bad driving history? Have you had accidents or right? All of these type of questions to figure out if I know what I'm doing as a bus driver. And let's say that I get through that screening process and you say, congratulations, Bryan. We're really, really happy to bring you on board. Welcome to the ABC Bus Company. Yay, right? I've been hired. So the next step then is what? And this is where companies really screw up is, okay, I'm hired. And now let's say that you're my supervisor. And it's like, well, Bryan, welcome to the bus company. Well, Elena, I'm really glad to be here. Great. Let's start your training. Here's a manual of all the stuff that you need to know. Read through all this stuff. Go sit in that conference room for the next week, and I'll find you after the week. Really, what's going on in that scenario is you just don't want to be bothered with me, right? You got shit to do, and it's like, oh God, all right, the new guy's here. Okay, fine. Go read the materials, and I'll find you later. After that point in time, the real training starts. So then you sit down with me and say, okay, Bryan, let's go over all the nitty gritty, what you need to know. So you already know how to drive this type of bus, right? You have the basic qualifications. Yes, I know this model. Okay, show me. And I show you how to turn on the bus and start it up and do all the things that you need to do. Then you're riding along with me and you're training me. It's like, okay, here's your route. Here's your hours of operations. When you drive to this neighborhood, be careful. There's some crazy characters in this neighborhood that you need to watch out for. Don't open your door at stoplight. And all these type of things I need to watch out for. Then you start telling me things that I need to know of exceptions. Okay, Bryan, here's what you need to do if the bus gets a flat tire. Here's what you need to do if you get in an accident. Here's what you need to do if the cops pull you over. Here's what you need to do if you get caught in a snowstorm, right? All of these scenarios that can happen to me as a bus driver. It's like, okay, great. So you're going through and training me with all these activities and everything else. And something always happens after that training period. Let's say it's 2 weeks that you're working with me for that bus driving job. Your boss then is going to come to you and say, hey, Elena, yes, manager, how's Bryan doing, the new bus driver that we hired? And you're going to give me one of three answers as the boss. You're going to say, hey, Bryan's doing great. Bryan, he's picking stuff up. He understands how to use the bus. He's competent. He's showing up on time. Good. I think we can let him be on his own for the route starting next week. Okay, great. The middle ground is Bryan's okay. I'm having to repeat stuff. He doesn't quite understand some of the things that he's doing. I think he'll be okay. but we're going to have somebody kind of working with him to make sure that he stays on track. We'll have to keep an eye on him. Okay. Third option is, of course, okay, yeah, Brian's worthless. Oh my God. He's been late 3 times last week. I think he was drunk on Tuesday. He tried to start a fight in the break room with another employee. No.
Brian's
Cut him
toxic.
loose, right? I don't know how this guy got through the door, but this is a knucklehead. We do not want the pain. That applies to every single role in a company.
It does.
Now, how does this long story apply to systems? And this is why I think we really screw up in the food industry is we write documentation to the complexity of the task and not to the skill of the individual. So
Mhm.
in those scenarios, right? If I'm a bus driver, I already know how to drive the bus. That's part of my training. What I really need to know is what do I do in those exceptions? Those things that I mentioned earlier. I go into a snowdrift or whatever. When do I elevate and contact you as my supervisor to say, hey, boss, I got a problem? And what does that boss do about it? What's that escalation process within the plant? What is that escalation process? What are those trainings? The trainings is always 2 things. It's your documentation process training, but the on-the-job training is where 90% of everything actually happens. That's how you have good bus drivers. This is all dependent upon competency. So in the plant, if I have temp workers who are stacking product at the end of a production line because I need a little extra help at the Christmas,
Mhm.
they have absolutely no leadway in what they do. It's exactly here's what you do. Here's some yellow feet on the floor, stand here. That's
Stay in the
Elena over
lines.
there. That's Elena. She's your boss. You do whatever she says. If you do not do that, you leave the building immediately. You are fired. You're an idiot. They need to know exactly what to do, and they never have access to the actual food product, only finished areas
Mhm.
where they can't cause any trouble. The farther you go up in that hierarchy of complexity, and here's the interesting piece of this whole story, is the less information and documentation those people need. What? Yeah, it's true. We'll use a dairy example here, Elena. If I'm in a dairy plant, where do I put my most experienced people? I put them on the critical tasks, the pasteurizer operator, the packaging machine filler, the
Mhm.
critical points in that process. They're the people who've been in that plant for 20, 30 years. They know exactly what they're doing. They don't need a 50-page worksheet of what I need to do in my work instruction. What they need to know is what do I do if it doesn't work? What if my RTD thermometer on my pasteurizer fails? What if the holding tube doesn't operate properly? What if I don't have good cut in, cut out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? How does that get elevated within the company for decision making? Systems. You need people in what we do who think in terms of systems. Super important. And I apologize for the long story, but it's a lesson that most people do not understand. I've been to a lot of plants and I always look for understanding of these principles, and most plants don't understand it.
Brian, I think that story is an excellent example of how hiring for the right skill set is so important. It helps you fast track your growth potential with your candidates that are in their roles.
Yeah.
Instead of having to start from scratch, building that initial foundational learning, and then building the skill and competency to make those critical decisions when they need to be made without supervision. You want your team to react the same way you would react in that situation without having to check in. Now, obviously, you've given them a lot of guidance in that process. You know, these are the parameters. This is when we escalate. This is when you loop me in. But if they don't understand the foundational components of that, they can't effectively perform their jobs.
Yes, that you said something really important there that I want to emphasize. I want to be able to essentially have my team become an extension of me. I want them
Mhm.
to understand absolutely what I want them to do, and I want them to know the words coming out of my mouth before I even say them. Like, okay, we need to
Yes.
go check with Brian. Brian's going to say this. What did Brian say? He said that, right?
Yeah.
In what we do, consistency is leadership, right? Understanding that this is what Brian believes in, this is what Brian is going to do, and this Brian will never deviate. And it's important to understand food safety versus food quality versus operations because there's
Mhm.
differences in those. And you need to teach those. Food safety, no compromise, right? We talk about
Yep.
that all the
Yep.
time here. Food quality is a business decision. It's going to impact complaints. It could impact sales. It's a risk-based decision. And in quality, you need to be able to supply the data to management to make the correct decision. And that's a system approach. And that's something that I'm checking for when I interview people. Do they understand that?
That's a very important differentiation between food safety and food quality.
Yes. And back to the interview piece, one of the questions I always ask, and in my book, I go into this. There's 4 sections in my book: quality and quality systems. The bus driver principle that we just talked about, teeny little portion of what I was talking about in the book. The 4th section in the book is HR, what we're talking about here, hiring and finding great people. You're only as good as your team. And one of the questions I always ask, I'm going to put you on the spot for this, Elena. This is one of the questions. And if you're a regular on the chat, you've heard this question before because repetition is important. Is I always ask this question is, okay, Elena, thank you for coming in. I've really enjoyed our conversation. There's something I would like to know. So you've had a really great career so far, and you've done a lot of amazing things. As you look back and you reflect on that, what are the 3 things that you're most proud of so far?
And for me, continuous improvement and learning development, because oftentimes the majority of the roles, especially in my earlier career, I've been given those roles without without knowing anything and learning everything related to those roles. So my passion for learning, my passion for leadership and developing teams, I think that's something that every company seeks to find in a candidate, that you can support growth in your team and drive results. And then,
Uh-huh.
of course, being an effective communicator. I think
Mhm.
being able to communicate with your teams and with leadership is essential to success in any industry and in every role.
Right. Good answer. And so part of this is 80% of the candidates I would interview couldn't answer that question. They would give me vague generalities. What this allows me then with this open-ended question is I can now choose one of those 3 things and I have a more in-depth conversation with you. So I can say, okay, well, Lane, that's very interesting. Around communication, what else can you tell me about that? And you can talk about Toastmasters and some of the accomplishments and other things that you've done in that area and how you've applied those to what you do. And Cortland's reflecting this back too around systems. You're demonstrating to me that you can think in terms of systems. If I do this, if I implement this, if I create this, if I go in this direction, I can now measure and manage these things associated with that. And if it doesn't work correctly, I can course correct. Something else I constantly talk about on this show all the time: plan, do, check, act. Everything in what we do is plan, do, check, act. You have to be able to explain things in those terms. And I would refer to that as you have to be able to tell your story. What's your plan? Here's what we did for complaints. We had a system in place that wasn't very good at measuring complaints. I don't think that we were getting to the true source of what consumers didn't like about our products. So what did we do about that? We created a new interview process and we created a website and we reached out to our top influencers, those people who are buying our products all the time, and we talked directly to them. And we checked our premises to see if we were working and actually measuring with what they were concerned about. And we found out we weren't. There was a defect in our product that we considered minor that our consumers hate, absolutely hate. As a result of that, we were able to modify our process with R&D and build that into our product, and our sales are now up 50%.
That's another great story from your book,
Right.
Brian, The Goldilocks Effect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have to read the book, learn that one.
Yeah, read the book.
And so what I did was I just told you a story. And I'm through that story, which I just completely made up off the top of my head, I'm demonstrating passion. Oh, yes, we found this. And I'm telling you, I like to find challenges and problems and fix them. And I get
Yes.
joy and satisfaction out of that. Making things better. That's what you want from quality people and food safety people. I want to make things better. And that's why I always explain to my teams is your job description of what I hand you is the base. That's what I just expect on a day-to-day basis. Your objectives are what you're doing to make the company better. Let's figure out what those things are. And at the end of the year, I'm going to be judging you against those. And guess what? We're going to have monthly and quarterly meetings so I can keep you on track so that you're not surprised at the end of the year. Because if you're surprised, that means I failed as a manager.
Absolutely. I like Michelle's comment of turning a negative into a positive. I think
Yes.
that type of storytelling and the interview process is so essential. When you present a challenge or an opportunity and you turn it into a success, that shows that you're able to add value and that you go above and beyond.
Yep. As managers, we are here to solve problems. So when our team comes to us on the floor and says, "Hey, boss, got a problem," it's now our problem, right? It's not their problem anymore. It's our problem. So you have to make sure that to understand, number one, they have the authority to fix things and they do that on their own, right? You're not there to solve all their problems for them.
Mhm.
Once it escalates, that's what we were talking about with the bus driver principle. Now it becomes your problem. A load of milk shows up for receipt and it's out of spec for temperature.
Yeah,
They can't fix
that's a
that. I'm the supervisor.
that's
It's
a
my
huge
job
problem.
to fix that. Um,
Mhm.
what this all boils down to, and we're at the 5-minute mark here, Elena, already, so we'll kind of bring this back up, is this saying, and if you're a regular on the chat, you've heard me say this before, is we had a saying at White Wave that our CEO had, which was, we want to be easy to work with. And then he would explain what he meant by that. It's like, if we are making it difficult for our vendors to get paid when they send us stuff because we're delaying their invoices or giving them the runaround, we're not easy to work with. If we're making it hard for our consumers to reach us if they're not happy with the product and we can't satisfy them, that means we're not easy to work with. If we're making life difficult for other departments because we think that's our job and our only job is to work in quality and I don't care what procurement, that's not being easy to work with. And he would give these different examples. And I was like, that is 100% right. 100%. And I use that standard to this day. If I'm working with a client and they have a co-man or something, or they're working with other people and they're difficult to work with, I'm like, no, fire them. Find somebody better. 80% of your
Mhm.
problems come from 20%, the good old Pareto rule. Right? That 20% is causing 80% of your grief. Get rid of the 20%. Figure that out. Make your life easier. Be easy to work with yourself. And that principle just works in so many ways. And so that's what I would be evaluating with, right? All the technical stuff, everything else, that's all great. But are you easy to work with? Am I going to enjoy working with you? When I come to your office, Elena, and say, "Hey, Elena, I got a second," you go, "Absolutely. What can I do for you?" Right? Or if you look up at me and go, right? Like, another thing, right? Right? Uh, Dustin was on here, a CEO here a little while ago, and he summed it up really well, this visual. He's like, if I'm a CEO and all the head of quality brings to me your problems, and I see you walking at me down the hall, and you got this look on your face like this, and you're walking down the hall, I'm going to turn around and walk somewhere else.
Yeah, I remember that episode. Everybody wants to work with people that are easy to work with, and I think that's why it's so important to collaborate and to support one another, because there's going to be a moment in time where you're going to need that other department or department manager support, and you're going to want to make sure that you built that relationship of influence where they're equally happy to make time for you and listen to your cares and concerns.
Yep. Cortland wants to terminate 80% of my team.
Oh, stop.
Cortland needs to do a better job hiring. That's what you need, Cortland.
Portland doesn't understand the Pareto rule.
Right.
It's
But
20%, not 80%, Cortland.
and a lot of times, and this is kind of the closing thought for me on this, is a lot of times we forget in quality, right? We're these technical people, and we think that we live in this little. Nope, I'm quality assurance and food safety, and that's what I do. And no, you don't. That's part of what you do. You're part of a company, and if that company is not making great products that people want to buy, and the company's growing, nothing else matters. And you're there to support that, and that means helping the other departments understand what we're talking about. Systems apply to everything in a company, everything. And that's why
Mhm.
quality a lot of times is called upon to help other departments build systems and collaborate, not dictate,
I
collaborate with
think
other
I
departments.
think quality can be the checks and balances within a company, and that's really the key focus of that role, is making sure that those checks and balances stay in place to remain profitable, but most of all, food safe.
Yeah. It's not being persuasive going to the procurement group and saying, you need to do this because SQF 2 point blah, blah, blah says you need to do this.
Mhm.
No, no, they don't care. What they need to hear is, we need to put in some amazing systems that are going to make your life easier. Would you like to hear about that? Well, yeah, of course I would, right?
How can we make this
Communication,
better?
communication. Right? So
Absolutely.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to share one last essential question I always ask during interviews, and that question is a game changer for me,
Mhm.
is do you have any reservations about me being successful in this role? This allows the interviewer to voice their concerns on the noted area and allows you to share experience that maybe hasn't been discussed or efforts that you are implementing to become more proficient in that area. Reading a book, taking a training, a certification, attending a webinar, and those are all great ways to do that. Informational interviews, networking, connecting with other leaders on that particular subject.
Absolutely. And so we're gonna have to close out our chat here, but I definitely want to give you time to let everybody know about some of the stuff you have coming up.
Thank you, Bryan. Many of you are familiar with the book giveaway that Michelle Wolzian and I co-founded. This is the next evolution of that project to give back to food safety professionals. Something really big is coming, especially for those of you in food safety. If you've wanted to grow your network, access top tier science, and stay on the cutting edge, but haven't had the means to join, Michelle and I will be sponsoring a full year membership for the International Association for Food Protection. So stay
Wow.
tuned because we're going to be receiving entries to select our winner.
Nice. And how can people find you?
You can find us on LinkedIn, and we will also be posting more information related to the contest to support one lucky winner of a year membership to IAFP.
Wow. Nice. Thank you very much. That's amazing that you guys are doing that. Thank you, Michelle, too.
Thank you.
And so one other final thing for me, and this was a ton of work, but I'm really excited about how this turned out is my new website. And so it's really focusing around what I've been talking about on identifying risk in your food company and helping to alleviate those things. And I've been looking for feedback. Elena gave me some really good feedback that helped improve the site. Continuous improvement is part of what we do. So if you've got the time, please click on the link, go check out my website, foodleadershipgroup.com, and let me know what you think. Is it a good site? Am I missing things? Is it telling you what you need to know? Is it telling that story? So thank you everybody for that. And with that, we have to, unfortunately, time flies all the time during these chats, is we have to close out here for this week. Thank you, Elena. Fantastic chat, very much.
Bryan, thank you. It's been an honor being here. And thank you to all of our friends and food safety heroes that tuned in today. Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Yes, happy 4th of July, everybody. Next week, there is no chat next week. I'm traveling, got to do some business stuff. So I'm traveling. More to come on that. There'll be a podcast coming out of that. But no chat next Friday. But of course, we'll be back the following Friday. I'll bring another amazing guest on. I have a new guest on next Friday, or Friday after this Friday. There we go, 2 weeks. And of course, we'll have the chat then. So 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, LinkedIn, YouTube. And in the meantime, as Elena said, everybody have a great 4th. Enjoy yourselves. Keep all your fingers and toes. Don't lose those. We all need them, especially in food safety. So have a great one and be safe. Talk to everybody soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.